People who work at five-star hotels, what type of crap goes on that management doesn't want people to know? We don't want you to know that the people who stayed in the room before you were damn nasty. Housekeeping gets the brunt of it. I've seen them carry out bags of used sex toys, scrub crap, actual human, presumably crap, off places there's no reason for human crap to be. The worst, though, was the couple that wanted a home birth, but not, at home, because gross. We had to deal with that hazmat situation. Ducked them as hard as we could with penalties and fees, though. Story 2. Worked in five-star hotels in Beverly Hills. Boy, do I have stories. Sheikh picks up an escort in the bar, takes her to his room. She roofies him and steals tens of thousands of dollars of cash, watches, and valuables. Husbands who will say hello to staff with their mistress on their arm on Thursday night and their wife on Friday night. Famous teen celebrity left a room full of needles and various substances paraphernalia behind for housekeeping to clean up. Middle Eastern royalty ships in multiple Ferraris and Lamborghinis to the hotel from their home country to drive for the week. Caught drag racing later that night by the cops in the neighborhoods of Beverly Hills. Largest checkout bill I've ever seen was roughly $2 million for guest who rented out an entire floor of suites for 3 weeks, promptly paid via wire transfer. Had to procure $100,000 cash for a guest whose wife wanted to shop on Rodeo Drive the next morning. The local bank doesn't even have that much. Had to get an armored car from the Central Lay Bank branch to deliver. The list goes on. Story 3. I don't work in one anymore, but used to. This isn't really shenanigans, but the staff is not nearly so impressed by famous or rich people as some of them seem to think we should be. It was a fancy hotel. We had rich and famous guests all the time. And it was usually the ones nowhere near the top of the ladder who tried to be the most imperious and expected the most deference. If you have to try to convince us you're high status, you aren't. We'd provide polite, professional service for all our guests and try to be helpful and accommodating, but being a C-list actor or whatever isn't going to get you a table in a full restaurant or an upgrade to the already occupied fancier suites. And if there's a severe blizzard and the airport is closed, we can't open it for you because you're too special to have to wait to fly out, even if you're a very important businessman. Story 4. One thing that five-star restaurants don't want you to know is that all their food comes off the same Cisco truck as the greasy pizza place up the street. Story 5. What goes on the room next to you? This week, we do evict and have arrested a couple for causing over $15,000 in damages to a room. This was done quietly late at night and the nearby rooms never found out. Story 6. Guests expose themselves to female staff frequently, especially housekeepers and room service. People will legit give you keys to their rooms, sometimes dealing with really crafty organizations for their banquets income, etc. One cool thing is that you can buy pillows, mattresses, etc. from many hotel brands if you really enjoyed your sleep at a hotel. Fake names. You can use an alias at a hotel. You check in with all your correct legal information, so the hotel has all your info. Then you let them know you'd like to use an alias during your stay and if you'd like to block external calls. So if a civilian calls looking for you, the desk says you're not there per instructions. If there is an issue of medical, legal, law enforcement, then the desk will provide the correct legal info per local laws. This is something also used by people hiding from abusers too. It's not always someone being crafty. Story 7. In some places, there's a reasonable chance somebody passed away in your bed. Obviously, it varies with the type of hotel and its clientele, but some places you get deaths weekly. Not that the hotel is unsafe, but unfit old people overexerting themselves. One place I worked, maybe 40% of the beds had been passed in. Bed bugs? They happen in every hotel. You might be paying $5,000 a night, but your luggage was in the hold with everyone else's. If there's only 1 or 2 bugs and none in the adjacent rooms, diamond style, so above, below, and both sides, then you brought them in. You know what I never saw happen? Maids stealing. Everyone always points at the maids when they lose stuff, but we always found it. No way the maids are risking their jobs over your used iPad or mall jewelry. With tips, they make pretty decent money. Story 8. Never trust glass in rooms. Gras are so stretched thin on time that they will clean the glasses with the same rags they clean the bathroom. After all, their goal is to make the room look clean. I worked as a GRA in a 5-diamond for years, and there was over a year period that went by where we didn't get a clean glass delivery. We didn't have dishwashers in the room, so management was complicit. This was in a 5-diamond, one of the top resorts in the world. Never trust glass in hotel rooms. Story 9. I used to work events at hotels, and one time we had a guest break their wine glass inside a water refill barrel. I left work for 2 weeks to go on vacation, and when I came back, all the glass was still piled inside the water refill barrel. People must have been drinking out of it because there were events booked while I was gone. Story 10. We don't bat an eye at escort or whatever goes on in the rooms as long as it doesn't affect other guests. Half the women that come to the bar are working girls. I don't know about all hotels, but I'm sure this happens at most of them. Front desk. Reservation staff will basically stalk you online if you're a notable VIP, and your picture will be shared internally to ensure everyone recognizes you. So you feel special when you arrive and everyone already knows who you are. Story 11. The scale. Management wants things to be automatic for you. A person there when you need them, and every item you could need before you need it. But the scale of that is purposefully hidden. For example, you see your housekeeper. You might see that there are 5 other housekeepers on that floor. A houseman per floor and a special request delivery person, if you look closely. You don't see the 4. 6 desk workers manning the radios so that we know when to enter certain rooms. Who wants special pillows? How we manage the 3 rooms that all want service at 1 p.m. or replacing rooms that asked for no service. You don't see the 6 supervisors spot checking checkout rooms for cleanliness. Nor do you see the laundry teams, plural. Sheets and guest laundry are separate, and guest is split into dry cleaning and non-dry clean. You might see the public parlor attendants, but you probably won't see the team cleaning the pool or deep cleaning the gym sauna. At 7:30 a.m. every morning, the service area just explodes with activity, like you kick 2 ant nests at once. 60 housekeepers on a single shift? Guess it's a slow day, and that's just housekeeping. We have 3 industrial-scale kitchens for various purposes. 4, if you count pastries, security teams, contact companies for large events, teams of engineers in every specialty. I don't even know where the IT office is, but we do have one. I'm one of the more knowledgeable on where to find items for special requests, and I still find new storage rooms every other week. We found a 1930 printing press nobody knew we had. It's damn wild how many moving parts there are. Flipping 500 rooms in a day while setting up for 2 $1 million weddings simultaneously. Fulfilling 100 room service orders while catering those weddings while running our restaurant. Fixing a leaky shower head in the pool while ensuring a guest had an extra couch in their room for the kid that just loves couch beds. All of this together is called an average Tuesday in summer. Story 12. Worked at the high-end restaurant at a ski resort that hosts a famous film festival. Lots of sex in the walk-in coolers, but never the people you'd want to walk in on. Story 13. I wrote travel guides to places in the Middle East, Dubai, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, etc., and have stayed in lots of 5-star hotels around the world for work. The whole 5-star system is murky from the start. The manager at a top-class London hotel told me that the hotel grading system in general is utter nonsense. The problem, he said, is that the list of criteria to reach each of the star ratings is little more than a tick sheet, albeit with around 500 factors to consider. For example, one criterion for being considered 5-star is fresh flowers being present in guest rooms, but there's a huge difference between a big ornate display of orchids and a bunch of daffodils. The presence of either would technically tick the box, and in theory, you could fulfill all the required 5-star criteria, yet be hugely inferior to the hotel next door that offers all the same things, but at a much higher quality and standard. The Forbes travel guide gave just 6 London hotels a 5-star rating, including the one my insider works at. But that means that fantastic hotels like the Ritz, the Langham, the Berkeley, and Mandarin Oriental Hyde Park are only 4-star. Are they really 20% inferior to the 5-star rated Al Bustan Ratana in Garhoud in Dubai, which is basically a business hotel near the airport? It's also difficult to maintain a consistent roll call of criteria as modern demands change. For example, Wi-Fi in the room is a relatively recent expectation, and what we expect as standard has changed over the years. So what constitutes luxury now has altered accordingly. When Savoy Hotel in London opened 1889, it was boasting about features such as electric lifts, speaking tubes to link each floor, and fully plumbed bathrooms. Now though, in the era of internet, crowdsourcing is often the most reliable way to judge somewhere. When hundreds of people on sites like TripAdvisor say a place is overpriced and terrible, then it doesn't matter what the official book says. And if a 1-star hotel gets nothing but praise from 90% of the people commenting, there's your consensus of rating right there. Story 14. Didn't work at 1, but delivered newspapers to 1. The escort thing was something the desk saw a lot. The best one was when the gentleman got robbed by 2 young ladies and immediately demanded the front desk call the cops. When the desk asked if he wanted to call the cops and tell them he hired 2 escort, illegal, he suddenly just grunted and marched up to his room. Story 15. I was a valet in college at a very swanky resort. The members had a certain sticker on their car, and the owners, partners, have a black sticker, which I had no clue, but knew they belonged. When a guy pulled up in a very nice Benz, I said, "Welcome back," not knowing his name. He was so pissed that I didn't know who he was. He was an ass to me, but I couldn't care less. Moments later, another younger guy pulled up to valet and asked me what the guy said to me. I hesitantly said he was mad. I had no idea who he was. The young guy looked disappointed and said, "That's my father, and he is an idiot. Don't worry about him at all." Then he gave me $20 to park his car and was extremely nice to every employee who ever interacted with him. Story 16. If you're in a 5-star hotel bar, be very careful who you talk to and how drunk you get. Even if you can afford to get drunk on $25 gin and tonics, escorts slip substances into drinks, and before you know it, you're dealing with a guest complaining that they've been robbed of thousands of dollars. I've had to do investigations of instances where a guy ends up in a room with an escort, and she'll get him to take out cash at the ATM because she has pics of what they've been up to and knows he's married. All the while, the guest has no memory of the whole night. Story 17. I worked at a Ritz-Carlton a few years back. It's literally the same as anywhere else. The hotel staff is amazing at their job, but on their personal time, they're just as ducked as everyone else. The kitchen staff had a few folks with substances issues and had to be sent home a couple times because of it. In my time there, I saw 2 waiters get fired due to embezzlement. The turnover rate for management was very high because they didn't pay enough for the area. The staff parties were wild, to say the least. We weren't allowed to greet celebrities by name since they wanted to be anonymous, so we would use their alias that day. Some were greeted by escorts, who were always super nice to everyone. A regular would rent out a room for a day, once a month, and make $40,000 that day from clients. Celebrities, business guys, you name it, crazy. Story 18. Miso worked for a fancy hotel. The building owners, not the chain, the actual building itself, came to visit. He was on the Forbes billionaire list. He was a nice man who had buffet lunches every day and tipped every staff members. He saw a crisp $100 every time he saw them. Housekeeper walking past, $100. Bartender setting up, $100 shift swap, $100 on the way in and out. Story 19. I spent 10 years in the boutique and 5-star hotel world. Got stories for days. But here is my favorite that sums up hospitality, former anyways. Our concierge was Le Clé d'Or. Had all the connections? This dude could get you into the French Laundry same day. He would often greet guests with sangria and sprigs of mint from his garden. Sometimes he had lemon slices from his tree too. He loved to tell guests all about his garden and they ate it up. Yeah, that's all bullcrap. Mint, lemon, and any other garnish we got from the local grocery store. The sangria? Cheapest box stuff we could find. But he sold the story like no other. At the end of the day, it worked. Story 20. Never ever, I repeat, use a chocolate fountain from a hotel or banquet hall. Picture this. It's an expensive ass Sunday brunch. Well, little Timmy just double-fisted strawberries directly into that chocolate, bit into both strawberries, then triple-dipped into the chocolate again. And some old rich lady just sneezed on it, and somebody else just dropped their snack into it. The best part, that chocolate gets strained and saved for the next week's brunch. Chocolate is way too expensive to throw away. Chocolate also does this thing where it'll seize if it has the wrong moisture content, from people dipping fruit and the juices going into the chocolate. So it'll get so thick it won't run through the machine. Want to know how they fix that? They add canola oil until it's smooth again. So yeah, next time you're at a wedding and they have a chocolate fountain, think of this. Think of this when you dip into that dirty ass watered down with oil chocolate. Story 21. Bedbugs are actually a big issue for hotels, including 5-star hotels. Look for the signs and check every time you get to your room. Do not want to bring them home with Story 22. I have worked at 2 hotels that are rated by Forbes, formerly Mobile, and randomly inspected frequently, and there is a very specific checklist of things the hotel restaurants must do, offer in order to keep their rating. We always had to be suspicious of any single diners because they could possibly be inspectors. So you could be a regular Joe Schmo, but if you're dining alone, you are going to get the 5-star treatment. Once we had a particular woman staying at the hotel, and somehow management figured out and confirmed she was an inspector. They literally took security cam stills and printed them out to give to all employees so we would know who she was. I still remember her name was Katrina. Something else interesting. One of the 5-star restaurants I worked at in a 5-star hotel would frequently be closed for private events. There was usually a contract written beforehand stating the group must spend a minimum amount of money. We got automatic gratuity on whatever that minimum was, but the goal was to go over so we would make more money. The people at the events usually didn't know these details. They weren't the ones paying. And towards the end of the night, if they hadn't reached the minimum, we would have to start pouring the most expensive wine and liquors to meet the goal. Who wants a few rounds of Macallan 25 doubles, etc.? And people still tipped cash on the open bars, so it was easy to walk away with $500 a night in tips after those parties. It was the easiest money I ever made. Ida. Macallan? Please forgive me. I am a lowly tequila drinker. Story 23. I'm a subcontractor that works in the IT business in the W Hotel in Miami. Beach has seen some crap. One day I come into work and there is a big scramble at the upper floors. This is where the penthouse are. Seems this kind of known millionaire had a little too much substances and was destroying the room. He was actually throwing furniture out the balcony, ripped everything out of the fridge, might have even thrown a mattress out the balcony. It was a big deal at the time, but they keep it hush with no police involved. A guy that's paying $13,000 a night is not going to be arrested. When the team finally got into the room, There was cake all over the tables, bottles everywhere, and a couple of high-class call girls that were in true fear. Next day, they booked the same room to Jennifer Lopez. Story 24. We don't give a crap about your backstory. Check in, be polite, and don't be in a hole. We want you to have a good time and a good stay, but we don't need to hear about everything that's going on in your life. We don't care. There are celebrity guests and rich people. Please don't bother them. They're only going to return if you don't bother them. They are here for a reason. The reason in most cases is to be left alone. If you book direct and not through a third party, every online site, I can do a lot for you as far as rates and comps. If you book third party, I really can't do crap for you other than give you a room. I can give you the same rate as a third party if you book direct, and there's a lot more perks. Most higher-end clients book direct. We have them on file. We know them. We have their credit cards on file, and we go out of the way for them. If you book third party, we flag you. We try and keep the restaurants and housekeeping up to above-board standards, but sometimes we shortcut because you're being a banana at the front desk and rushing us through everything. Story 25. I worked at one of the premier hotels at a ski resort in the country. Top 10. Met celebrities, royalty, politicians, athletes. Hockey players are the nicest athletes by a wide margin. Royalty is great or more likely. Awful. A-list celebrities want to be left alone or treated as just another person. Politicians are bigger holes when they're with their families. Saw lots of sex, substances, drinking, escorts, the usual. I was most amazed by how nice staff were to guests when management continually made our lives harder and crappier. We just let it roll off our backs and keep smiling until we just quit. We were paid so little and respected so little by management. If you weren't thick-skinned, then you quit by week's end. Best thing I saw was the hotel dog. Think alpine dog that people can pet, kids can get woken up by him in the morning, plays on the ski slopes, etc. Well, he escaped his pen, made straight for the high-end restaurant, and went hog wild. Jumped on a few tables and scarfed $100 steaks like they were candies. Me and another guy saw it. We worked during the ski day and cleaned up into the evening, so it was just him and I finishing up in our department at the time, which was by the dog's kennel. We both saw he was going to escape, and we could have stopped it, but we just wanted to watch the world burn. Greatest day of work there by far. Story 26. A friend of mine works for a small luxurious hotel in London. He told me the concierge system there is absolutely absurd. Money buys everything. Anything the clients want, clients get. They are told never to say no. Worst case, they say, I don't think this is really appropriate. Obviously, substances and escorts are a classic. He showed me 20 phone numbers of substances dealers in his phone to be able to get whatever substances to the customers. He never buys, though, only gets people in contact. And for harder tasks, he goes through professional concierges who charge a lot. You want a new Prada dress at 2 a.m. for the party you're about to attend? Sure thing. Let's wake a few people up. Charge triple the price and split the benefit between people involved. Have a good night, madam. You want tickets for the Wimbledon final that takes place tomorrow? You have 20 thousands of pounds sterling? Enjoy the game, sir. But in some cases, they can't satisfy the customer. So when a couple of clients came back drunk asking him to have sex with the wife while the husband was watching and filming, he felt like it was a good time to say, I don't think this is really appropriate. Story 27. I worked in a major Vegas hotel as the senior hotel manager. I've seen it all. A few things you wouldn't know. Every hotel has bed bugs at some point. It's not the hotel's fault. We noticed international travelers tend to bring them, probably because they're staying at multiple hotels per trip. You can even get them from the airplane. To check for bed bugs, just inspect each layer of the sheets, under the pillows and mattress. They look like tiny roaches. If you see red spots on the sheets the next morning, that's usually a sign you have been bitten, but the bites can sometimes take a few days to show or get noticed. Checking in late at night sometimes means free upgrades or discounted upgrade rates. We would try to sell every last suite at night for almost 80% off. We just wanted something, so they don't go unoccupied. Sometime if we were oversold on rooms, the late arrivals, midnight, would get a free suite upgrade because we had no choice. Of course, this could also backfire if the hotel is sold out. You may get downgraded for being a late arrival. When you complain, the nicest, more understanding guest gets the better compensation. The rude guest gets bare minimum. Always treat the staff with respect and be friendly. You'd be surprised the number of people who are rude, even for the smallest of issues. Story 28. Corporate intern events where the kids would get plied with alcohol. Infuriating. We had one company annually bring 80 interns as part of a site visit tour, and it was a nightmare. I was sure someone would die every year. One year, there were 3 hospitalizations, though, and one of the boys sent the hospital bill to the hotel. To be clear, the entire team knew about the event and were very vigilant about refusing service. We were not involved or liable in his medical issue. The audacity, particularly because he and all of his intern colleagues trashed everything. We had to prepare the lobby by removing sculptures and porcelain plant pots. One year, we started always removing a kind of sharp-cornered bookcase because too many drunk interns had hurt themselves on it. There were bodily fluids everywhere and linens destroyed beyond continued use. Plumbing broke daily. There was always smoking damage in some rooms. But all the adults were useless, of course, and all adults were culpable in providing alcohol to the underage people. The company accepted the bill for the damage every year and always came back, and we would add literally everything we could. We would tack weeks' worth of room nights onto their bill because we had to keep dozens of rooms out of service while damage was repaired. The company paid for everything we comped for complaining guests, too. They also paid for anything we had to replace, and they were so used to the damage fees we would just throw things in there sometimes. Like a treadmill finally broke during their residence. But did one of their guests break it? Don't know, didn't care. They bought us a new treadmill. We were one of 3 hotels on this annual tour. Story 29. I worked in security for one, and housekeeping called us all the time for substances they'd find in a room. The first thing we'd ask for is the room number, and we'd look up the name of the guest. If it was a VIP or someone important to us, we'd tell them to leave it there and we'd take care of it. If the guest was someone we didn't know and not important to us, we'd go up there and take it out of the room. Then threaten to evict them from their stay if they did it again. The clues, hints we would use. What's their status tier? Diamond members almost always got a pass. How did they book the room? If it was a third party like Expedia, no pass. How many times had they stayed at our specific property? 5 or more? Pass. How much had they charged up? If they were spending money on property outside of the room rate, pass. Basically, you could have substances in your room if you spent enough money. Story 30. I don't work there, but I know someone who does. Constantly delaying paying the allowance of interns. Not every staff you see is a full-time, experienced person. A good number of them are interns, who haven't even graduated and are made to take on several roles from being a janitor, housekeeper, receptionist, and sometimes assistant chef if they are shorthanded. They work until 12 a.m. with little breaks in the name of experience. And the least that the management can do is pay them on time, but no. The allowance, which is, say, barely $200 a month, keeps getting delayed, and some of them completed their internship without seeing a single cent. Why not just quit? Because if they do, they won't be able to graduate, and it is arranged by their university, college, and they can't just quit or switch to another hotel. Story 31. At a certain Beverly Hills hotel, where I valets for a short amount of time, many stars' cars are just left there. They come and get them whenever. There was also a code name for Justin Bieber, who visited often. I can't remember it. He picked it himself. His G-Wagon and a Bentley were just kept down there free of charge. Usher also left his bike there a few years back and has just never collected it. Story 32. I used to work at a 5-star hotel in Miami in 2001. There was a lot of damage done to the rooms by very entitled rich and famous people. But it was a beautiful hotel and still is. Stunning. There was a lot of sex parties, though. A lot of substances and sex. I have a cool celebrity story. Outkast stayed there for 2 days, Andre 3000, and Big Boy. I'd met a lot of famous people, but none were as kind as them. Absolutely none. As a young woman at the time, I dealt with a lot of inappropriate things in that hotel, which included famous men and women propositioning me. I had more women proposition me for sex than men, oddly, and some were celebrities and socialites. Others were just super rich or girlfriends of athletes or artists. On the first night, Outkast were there with a team, rented 8 deluxe rooms for their team and whoever else. A couple of women were harassing me in an elevator because I wouldn't give them the room number for either party. I got spat on and shoved in there. I was really shaken up and cried hysterically when I got down to the lobby. Lo and behold, Andre was down there talking to some fans very nicely. He just had came back in from exploring the city around 2 a.m. He went searching for a vegan spot. He was ahead of the curve. He saw me crying and came over to where I was standing to ask if I was okay. Firstly, I couldn't even make words out because I love Outkast, and I felt humiliated. He sat down with me, and the same women harassing me in the elevator from the 12th floor to the lobby just observed and called to him for his attention. "Why are you with that ugly idiot referencing me? She's a rude, desperate idiot. Wouldn't let us come find you." He had a look of disgust on his face and just told them that I was his close friend from Atlanta. The funny thing is that I'm from Atlanta, and earlier in the day we checked them in. I told them how much they meant to me as a girl from Atlanta. He actually ended up speaking with me most of the night in the lobby, and we went on the rooftop after I got cleaned up. My manager was very cool and handled everything. She had gotten those girls escorted off the premises, which was a relatively painless thing. Within the hour, thanks to his complaint, Andre, they were gone. After I got cleaned up and they left, we just hung out most of the night. I was still on shift, but my manager was just so understanding. We must have spoken till 7 a.m. I never forget them. Andre gave me 5 free tickets to a sold-out show they were doing the next night. I brought my friends with me, have us backstage treatment and a ride there. Hung out in his bus after and hung with Big Boy too. They had separate tour buses, and Andre's didn't have any liquor or substances. He was vegan and holistic at that time. He had his chef make us a chickpea salad. and it was one of the best moments of my life. I'm probably the only person with a photo album they keep up with now, but I look at the pics I got developed from that night. There's a picture of Andre and I hugging and making a stupid face. I look at it sometimes because I remember how happy that experience made me. I was supposed to work that night, but my manager gave me a free pass for the weekend. She stepped in for me. Funnily enough, years later, I was in Ireland for a friend's wedding, and him and I stayed at the same hotel. He was shooting the Jimi Hendrix movie. We were on the elevator together because we stayed on the same floor. He actually said hello and we got to talking. He just said I looked familiar to him, and I told him we met years ago. We hugged for so long. This was maybe 2012. Saw him again by chance in Philly in 2019, where I now live. Took a picture and this time swapped numbers. I never text him, but I'm so glad this came out of the hell of working in a hotel 20 years ago. I would never work in a hotel again, but this was an experience I'm so thankful for. Story 33. I had a pretty good experience at one. I worked at a 5-star hotel for 3 years. Actually had a great time there, and the employees genuinely cared about the service they gave. Management was great, and it really felt like a massive family. I still keep in contact with some of the employees years later. I think I was just fortunate, really. Story 34. My husband worked at several luxury hotels and residences, rich people who live at the hotels, and besides how absolutely disgusting everything inside the rooms actually is, I was most shocked by the behavior of the ultra-rich. I'm not talking businessmen and doctors. I'm talking Saudi princes and heirs to dynasty families. The level of comfort and technology these people have come to expect is things we cannot imagine. What do you mean there isn't access to intercoms next to the bathroom for when I need services while going potty? The television inside the shower is only a 40-inch, and there is no gold in this room. I need a better suite. I'm going to need you to go out, buy me better bedding, remake my bed, and then do it again tomorrow because I won't sleep on the same bedding twice. And that's just the tip of the icebergs. Story 35. Affairs. The hotel I worked at for a year had a strict privacy policy around this, and you're told, well, it's drilled into you. Not our business. Unsure what it's like these days. But my entry-level job in the travel booking world started as a travel planner for a 5-star chain in Melbourne, Australia a couple of decades ago. My station was next to reception. I looked like I was a part of reception, but was on the end. And it was not uncommon to have the affair couple check in then, while the affair partner was still checked in. The cheating spouse would return the following day with spouse, sometimes spouse and kids, and check into another hotel room. We were under strict instructions, not our business. But it wasn't uncommon on holidays for both spouse and affair partner to be in the same hotel at the same time. Wasn't uncommon to see married people use the day stay program to cheat, sometimes with the same person. Affair partner, but on occasion someone new. It's not below me to say I took some joy in knowing the cheater was being cheated on. However, there is that one that will be seared on my brain forevermore. A married couple, both had rings on, so I just assumed husband and wife, were regulars at the hotel for weekend stays, nice chatty folk. I was young, so I didn't get many people stop and chat with me. I booked them on some day trips, sunset dinner cruises, etc., mostly couple, romance-geared packages. And since ID wasn't required for both to make the bookings, they never corrected me when I booked the itineraries in both names, but with his surname, since he paid with his card, I had his full name. So cut to a few months later, this married man checks in, but with a different woman. Sigh. I will forever feel like a monster when that woman snuck downstairs to book herself and her husband the exact same romantic sunset cruise package that man had booked with this other lady only a fortnight ago to celebrate the end of her chemo round. She wouldn't stop talking about how this getaway was her thank you gift to her husband, who has been so amazing and supportive during this time. Typing it, I still feel like the worst human that I choose my job. Breach of privacy is instant dismissal over telling her what was going on. And yes, that other woman, the woman who was having the affair with the married man whose wife was battling cancer, did turn up with her own husband and booked a dinner cruise, and her last name on her ID was not the last name I had been using previously, so that sealed it that they were having an affair together. The other thing is substances. Had a semi-famous couple have their wedding reception and most guests were high. Best man passed out in the bathroom, shat himself with the straw still up his nose. Maid of honor pissed herself while sitting at the bridal table. The cleaners see the worst of it. I just worked up near reception and saw some bad things, but no doubt the cleaners would have seen the worst of what hotels don't want the public to know about. Story 36. Alamau. I have so many stories, and honestly, I want to write a memoir about it. We legit had someone once break into the archive room and steal everyone's credit card details. Nobody noticed until like a month later. It was a crap show. I've had to deal with people throwing the furniture off balconies and throw onto other guests' cars. Sadly, a lot of DV incidents, hospitalizations, people end their lives. Undercover cops looking at CCTV for high-end criminals? And don't even get me started on how clean those rooms are. Your $1,000 a night does not reflect those standards. They still wash them teacups in the bathroom sink or the bathtub. Lastly, I'm an Australian and was working in the US for a while in this fancy 5-star resort, frontline position working holiday. And what management really didn't want you to know is how little they paid us. At home, I could survive on our Australian minimum wage, but had no chance in the US of surviving on theirs. We weren't allowed to accept tips at this particular company. There's a reason for a high turnover in hospitality, I guess. Story 37. In the older institutions, really dedicated lifer staff tend to become really elitist. As for guests, the usual. Most people tend to just be another guest, but there's a lot of grandstanding, threats against jobs, and security of the institution's reputation, entitlement. In my case, handouts of very expensive and very officiously regulated products, escort, substances, gambling, sleeping around with business associates to assure deals and bribery. All things pieced together by hearing multiple conversations within a week. I don't recall bribery of public officials or anything like that, though. Story 38. I've been working in a 5-star hotel for about 3 years. There's plenty of stuff going on that we pretend to do on the outside and in front of guests, but we actually don't. 1. First in, first out. You know how you're supposed to take out the things that expire first and not the newer drinks, foods to make sure you're not wasting food? I don't think anyone did that. I'm pretty sure the kitchen staff even put meat on the buffet that was past its best-by date. 2. Overbooking. During big events or fairs or festivals, the hotel will sell more rooms than they actually have just to make more money. It works in a way that because of that time period of an event, you pay in advance and you can't cancel your booking. Meaning if you don't show up, you still pay. The hotel expects people to not show up, so they try to book as many people as possible and a few more. 3. Secret signals. I used to work at the front desk the most time. It's more or less the first impression and the one place everyone goes. Guests, scammers, robbers, you know. If we were threatened or received a call of someone threatening us or the hotel, for example, saying they placed a bomb inside the hotel, we had to subtly let our coworkers know. The signal for help at the front desk was dropping a stapler. When harassed by a guest and in need of help, the go-to was dropping something, like a glass, and making noise like loudly apologizing. Draw attention from other guests and employees, so the guests will stop. It was considered rude and unprofessional to just tell a guest to stop harassing you. Story 39. I worked at a hotel that fancied itself as a 5-star, but let's be real, it was barely a 3. Our oil baron owner spent all of his free time at the hotel instead of at his main business, and loved to have staff bow to his every whim while paying an absurdly low wage. Eventually, low wages equaled an extremely low-skilled workforce. And nowhere was that more evident than in our security department. While some of them were ex-military and some of the funniest people I ever had the pleasure of working with. The newer ones fancied themselves as future P material. And one of the perps they were most on the lookout for were the human scum who would dare to solicit an escort while staying in our prestigious Virgin establishment. Cut to a normal Friday night when we had in-house a large group of conference attendees, all of whom seemed to retire to their rooms fairly early compared to most conventions. But then again, this being a conference of elderly evangelicals, it was not surprising. In the still of their relines, one intrepid security guard named Brad, actual name, spotted a lone white female entering the room of one of our guest attendees during the overnight hours. Brad, going by natural instinct instead of consulting with front desk staff, went straight to that room and knocked on the door with the might of a warrior. When the perplexed male guest appeared at the door, Brad asked to speak to him in the hallway, and in a pointed yet whispery drawl asked, "Sir, is that a escort that went into your room?" The guest, with astonishment and not even a hint of anger, simply said, "That would be my wife. Her flight just arrived." And that is how we managed to have our first ever all-employee meeting. Story 40. We went on lockdown once because a man walked into the lobby with a shotgun. There were also 2 loud bangs in the motorcade around the same time. We were sealed up tight for about 45 minutes. We had people escape into our area in hysterics before the doors to the lobby were locked, but I never saw the person with the gun. One woman in particular was hyperventilating because he pointed the gun straight at her before walking away. Anyhow, we were told that we'd be fired if we talked to the media. By the time I finished counting my drawer, the news was saying that an attempted bank robbery had spilled over into our motorcade before they drove away. By the time I got home, that story was gone from everywhere but a single news outlet who issued a correction stating that a car had backfired in the motorcade. We weren't allowed to discuss it. It was kept as quiet as in-house celebrity gossip. Story 41 was in room service. If someone buys a bottle of booze and doesn't open it, for example, they leave it out for us to take. Policy is to bring it back to the kitchen to put into inventory to be resold. A coworker shared that the record, as far as they knew, was 1 bottle of champagne that was resold 7 times. Story 42. I'm a concierge, the guy with the little golden keys on his lapels, in luxury hotel in a major European capital. We know everything that happens, and while the days of rock stars throwing TVS out the windows are over, there is a lot of depravity. The most depraved individuals are often the CEOs with no time for anything, so their activities range from substances-filled benders to group sex and escorts. Then the next morning, they get their wake-up calls to go to their meetings. I've witnessed a really irascible regular guest have a little mix-up with his nightly visitor. They somehow kept missing each other in the lobby, and then he finally saw her leaving the hotel and went after her desperately. A lot of really messed up people book hotels because they're lonely and also contemplate end. Some even go through with it. Guests like that get flagged, and we keep an eye on them. We had a case of a guy who nobody suspected, and he eventually came and thanked us for being so friendly to him. It made him rethink his decision. That was a rough weekend. We have fortunately only had like 5 deaths in the last 13 years. Lots of infidelity, and I could have a field day with the amount of famous people I've seen cheating on their partners. It's kind of expected, but at the same time, it's really ridiculous too. Lots of people who are not officially out and will have call boys up in their rooms and stuff. Story 43. Used to work in 1-2 summers ago in a remote place where we lived in accommodations across the street from the hotel. A lot of us have slept with each other. Not me, had a girlfriend at the time. And the busiest days are weekends, so we usually have Mondays off. Sundays were called Sunday Fun Day, where we would go to town or other people's dorms and do way too much substances. Story 44. Not a 5-star but 4-star golf country club. Management of floor staff was awesome. Nothing to complain about there. The problem started at higher management. Mobile formatting, sorry in advance. Our club had both a head chef and executive chef. This would mean the exec. Chef wouldn't be in the kitchen as often and could work in the upstairs function kitchen if the need arises. Weddings, corporate dinners, etc. Head chef was the sweetest guy on the planet. Exec. Chef was on the other end of the scale completely. If he saw you not working, say a quick 30 secs to get water, or talk to another server about the waiting tables, he would slide hot baking trays under the benches and hit us in the ankles. If a service went poorly, usually due to understaffing, he would pull all wait staff and chefs together into the kitchen and kick and scream in an all-out rage against us when most of the problems had occurred by either his doing or the rostering staff. He had also fabricated a story saying that the manager that I responded to came onto him with lustful overtone, saying she wanted to engage in an affair with him, even though security cameras showed him screaming at her due to the waitstaff's supposed incompetence. After all this came to light, he was promptly asked to leave and is now struggling to find work even among local pizza parlors since everyone now knows how much of a delight his character is. Story 45. Big discounts for complainers is typical, but the bigger the complainer, the bigger the discount. After 9 months as a low-level front desk person, I was deemed trustworthy and in the know, enough to be allowed to give a 25% discount without asking a supervisor. Some of these types you could see coming at check-in, and in rare instances, entire stays were comped. Note, in most of those cases, something truly bad happened, to eliminate the potential scene from escalating in a very public manner. As someone else mentioned, maids are highly unlikely to steal anything. These types of places have very skilled loss prevention teams, and so employees are highly vetted and know they are being watched. The loss prevention guys I worked with were very good at kid-gloving baseless accusations of theft, while trying to explain that they were doing everything in their power to resolve the problem. But could the guest kindly assist them? By relaxing in their room and double-checking items while they interview anyone who might have been in the room. Most of the time, the items were still in the room or had been turned in, dropped, lost, forgotten at the bar, to loss prevention. This isn't necessarily something management doesn't want people to know, but I worked at a resort during college, so it was enlightening to me at that age. How many neglected wives there are at these places. I'm not talking about the stereotypical trophy wives who are content to run up the spa and room service bills while their husbands are in seminars or golfing. There are successful, smart, beautiful women who have busy, crafty husbands and are happy to talk to anybody about it who will listen. And the women ran the gamut. Entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, CPAs. It was sad to hear stories about how it was nice to get away to such a beautiful place, but that they would likely not see their spouse, and that was okay. I was very naive at the time, and it was a huge surprise. Story 46. As soon as you walk in, ask tons of questions about every aspect of the hotel. Always order a specialty cocktail with dinner or lunch and use every outlet of the hotel. They will immediately flag you as a Forbes shopper. Everyone in the hotel will know your name. And a picture we stole from your Facebook will be all over the hotel behind the scenes. You'll get the best service you've ever had. Story 47. I have a few from my 20. There was a natural disaster which required staff to stay on site with a floor to themselves. Bathtubs were filled with ice and booze, and managers were found wandering back halls in their undies. Michelin chef and manager caught on camera cheating on their partners in a stairwell. Leaders of in town for global governmental meetings, eating chicken in the lobby and throwing the bones on the floor. My friend was the GM of one of the most famous high-end hotels in America and shared a story about a resident of their penthouses having a mental breakdown, destroying everything, ripping the sink off the wall, and sprinting down the hallway naked and getting tackled by security. His neighbors include CEOs of Fortune 50. The reasons the prices are so high isn't the rent. We owned the building, bought it from a failed casino owner turned political leader for pennies. The prices were influenced first by extremely high payroll, then quality, then profit. Also, people pass in hotels all the time. Age, stress, whatever. It's not uncommon to get calls from concerned spouses. Do a wellness check, and oof, they're rolled out the back during quiet hours. There's a decent amount of theft internally, but the workers all protect and cover for each other and turn on managers that catch them. These major established properties, the staff is pretty akin to the mafia. They make things happen, not as much substances used as others mentioned at ours. A lot of the staff was past their 20. Story 48, actual bomb. In the driveway on the other side of the wall from my bar, the cops set up blocks within a 2-block radius. Mind you, we were a massive hotel in a downtown center directly across from the convention center. Management had us clear everyone from the bar, but we had to stick around just in case we had to reopen and serve drinks to guests. Finally, after many hours of hiding in the corridors, they let us go because it was near last call and no money was to be made. Above us, many sleeping guests were clueless until they finally evacuated the hotel at 4 in the morning. The bomb was real, the threat was real, and to save face, they put us all in danger just because. I got a taxed $50 gift card. Damn them. Story 49. People will flush anything down a toilet. Towels, sheets, giant craps that no human could have possibly downloaded, pillows, paper, food, bottles, and just about everything else. Best one ever, got a call to snake a toilet in a room. Twitchy Latin guy tells me it is super important I be careful to not damage said flushed item. Gotcha. I managed to fish out his bags of various powders and pills out without breaking a single bag open. He offered me some product as a tip, and when I declined, just handed me a stack of $20 and ushered me out the door. It was a $2,000 tip. Oh, and ladies, tampons and pads do not get flushed down the toilet. And for everyone else, flushable wipes aren't. Story 50. I worked at a 4-star resort. We had a vacant room broken into at night and used as a temporary substances den. They used knives to hang blankets over the windows and vandalized the room with crap. Left a bunch of needles in the room. We found a room key in there for another room and scanned it to figure out who it belonged to. The key we found in the room belonged to another guest who had checked in 2 days prior for a 1-week stay. It turns out she was an addict and her dealers broke into one of the vacant rooms and she went and partied with them all night in the vacant room. Why they didn't just go do all of this in her room is beyond me. They broke into a vacant room when they had a perfectly good and legal room to do this all in. Anyway, like another user said, we had her arrested early in the morning before the other guests were awake. Business as usual in the hospitality industry. Story 51. I was merely a plebeian 4-star night manager, but we were the best property within 50 miles, so we get the same demographics. I learned to hate humanity there. My blood pressure skyrocketed, my marriage dissolved, and my faith in humanity was destroyed. I learned most celebrities and old money are crap humans, and I never carried a gun in public until after I'd worked a year on night shift. I guess you can say I've seen some crap, could write a book, but I just want it to be a small footnote in my history. Story 52. I previously worked in room service at a historic downtown hotel in a metropolitan city. During my time there, the general manager announced his retirement and the corporate overlords sent in an interim general manager from out of state. Since he didn't own home here, they allowed him and his wife to stay in the hotel under the premise that he would shortly take over the role and purchase a home. His wife was either retired or out of work for his opportunity. So she spent a lot of time in the hotel, mainly the bar. She would run up a large table and stumble to bed several nights a week. On more than one occasion, she was found by staff outside of their room, butt naked, and once topless, headed toward the lobby. It became such a problem and embarrassment for the GM that they moved from the hotel earlier than planned. So I guess in this case, the management didn't want people to know about his wife. The end. At the time I left, he was still GM. Story 53. I worked at a 5-star hotel in England as a bartender. Hosted events and stuff. One thing that was common was my manager would just spam extra drinks onto the bill at events to make more money. Or for example, if a big wedding ordered 50 bottles of champagne, they'd only give them 30 and would keep 20 back, and if they ran out, they'd have to buy more. I reported this to senior management and they just laughed, saying it's normal. I actually got told off for not taking part in this. Story 54. I had a surgeon come in and complain the microwave in his room wasn't working. Went up to check on it and he showed me how it wouldn't turn on. He opened the door, put his coffee in, set the time, and hit go nothing. He didn't shut the door. They obviously work long days, but damn. Hotel workers of Reddit, what is the worst thing you have found in a room after a guest stay? Story 1. Worked at an upscale ski resort. One family let their toilet training kid pee behind the toilet and under the sink throughout their whole visit, then put our white towels on top of it to help clean up the mess. Whole place smelled like a freaking rhino enclosure. Ruined the towels. Story 2. A syringe under a mattress after I felt it on the end of my finger. I was tucking in a sheet under the bed, and there were actually 2 uncovered insulin needles under there. I got rushed to hospital. Hepatitis shots and a tetanus shot. 2 different HIV prevention medication for a month. Monthly blood tests for about a year. I'm fine, and it barely stuck me in truth, but I was already afraid of needles and disease. I still feel traumatized. I was not going to post at all, but I've always wondered if there was anything else I should have done. The doctors assured me that they were more precautious than necessary. Story 3. Someone ended up take her life away in the hotel room by hanging themselves in the closet. Was in there a few days before we found him. Story 4. Worst to clean up. Not because it was gross, but because it was annoying and time-consuming, was popcorn. A baseball team stayed in a couple rooms, and I guess they had those like caramel popcorn balls that they had just thrown all over the room. At the walls, furniture, it stuck to the carpet and was almost impossible to vacuum. Story 5. Someone pooped in the nightstand. It had been there long enough to dry out, so it took nearly an hour to scrub it clean. Another room had menstrual pads stuck all over the walls at random. Story 6. Old couple checked out and left a huge box of sex toys. Not that bad, right? We keep items for 90 days. Hotel gets first dibs after that. Say it's an iPad that would be good for something. Then whoever found it gets second dibs. Then GM, then it's whoever wants it. Head housekeeper kept them locked in her desk BC. She wanted first dibs and was scared someone else would take them. Story 7. Woman with mysophobia, fear of germs, stayed with us. She never let the cleaning ladies into the room as she preferred to clean it herself. One day she leaves to go out and removes the "Do Disturb" sign. Maid calls down and says the room has a strong chemical odor and found bags of pee and poop in the drawers. Story 8. A bachelorette party came through, and after they left the next night, we had a new rule that charges a $400 glitter fee. But I mean, you couldn't see the floor so much glitter. It's been a few years, and you can probably still find glitter in the carpet throughout the hotel. Story 9. 2 worst experiences I had to witness were, a couple came to the desk early in the AM. They clearly had been in an all-out fistfight. They were a cash-paying customer, and all they said was, "Sorry, we got in a fight. There's blood in the room. We are HIV positive." Then they took off. Room was an absolute horror show. Had to hire special cleaners to come gut the room and ended up replacing basically everything in the room. Room was uked for almost a year. Same hotel. We had some wards of the state types staying. Worst were a couple with a newborn. They couldn't afford basically anything, so made the decision to use our towels as diapers. State wouldn't let us kick them out, and they were just taking the towels off the carts. Ended up having to evict them from the hotel as they had been there long enough to establish residency. Story 10. Not a hotel, but a group sex club, and not a terribly bad thing. Just a little unusual. After closing and the usual cleanup begins, we discovered a Lego Darth Vader figurine on the bed. Why was it there? Where had it been? What sights did it see? We'll never know. Story 11. It was a hallway. I worked the front desk. A Little League baseball team was staying the night, and a guest complained to my manager about bats flying around. My manager assumed the baseball team was just being rowdy and headed up to tell them to calm down. Turns out it wasn't baseball bats, just a normal old flying bat hanging out in the hallway. Story 12. A friend used to clean hotel rooms as a side job. Once, he found a crap on the nightstand with a slice of cheese on top. Another time, he went into a room to clean, and this woman was lying on the bed naked. He apologized and started to leave. She offered him 50 euros to spit on her while she pleasured herself. He spat on her. They found out who it was and charged him extra for cleaning, etc. Also banned him from the chain. Apparently, this wasn't the only hotel he would furnish with his nightstand-based sliced dairy fecal top deposits. Story 13. I worked at a hotel a few years ago. Front desk. I checked out a nice couple in the morning. They were very friendly. Said they enjoyed their stay. Then housekeeping got to their room. The poor woman looked shell-shocked. I got to go through the room with a camera and my supervisor to document the state of the room. 2 large, black sex toy, lots of Ziploc baggies with substances, syringes, some used, some still with caps on them, including 2 in the toilet. We also found what appeared to be feces smeared all over the bedding and walls and a small digital camera. Police were called, descriptions of them taken, and all their information they had used to check in. I quit soon after, so I don't know if they ever found them or pressed charges. Story 14. Pizza. And not just like leftovers. An entire pizza, and not a single slice of it in the box. The first red flag we found was the slice of pizza smeared all over on the TV. Then we saw two slices side by side like they had worn them for slippers and dragged their feet across the floor. One slice in the dresser, one in the nightstand, one in the sheets, and one in the bathroom sink. We cleaned the room as normal and put all the pizza in the box. The whole time I'm wondering why someone would do this. Was the pizza not good? Was one slice enough and you had to buy the whole thing? I'm doing the final checks in the room and it still smells like pizza. I flick the lamp on and look for the final slice. I finally find it, shadowed in the lampshade. This individual had smeared the last slice on the inside of the lampshade. That was the final piece of the puzzle, or pizzazool. This person bought an entire pizza just to hide it in his hotel room. Story 15. I was in housekeeping for a while in the winter, and a coworker of mine found a poop in a pocket tied to the microwave door. Definitely the most baffling thing I'd heard of anyone finding. Story 16. People that have passed, feces on the walls and furniture, along with vomit, substances, and once a gun. Feces and vomit is the worst, though. Story 17. The guest tried to blame the hotel for noise. We charged them for the cleanup. Was balancing month-end one day when the front was swarmed with police cars. They raided a room with no notice to us at the front desk. Turned out a guest was cooking met in one of rooms with 2 escorts and a dog. There was a short standoff before everyone was arrested. Their car was seemingly forgotten about in the parking lot, but it disappeared a week later. We were unable to charge for damages since all of their cards were stolen. Story 18. Not me, but my dad. He was the director of housekeeping for a worldwide hotel chain. His housekeepers didn't know what to do with a girthy 12-inch sex toy suction cupped on the writing table. It was still very moist, he said. Then he looked up who stayed in the room to see if maybe they wanted it back, but it was 2 tiny, frail little old ladies, canes and all. And he said it was too embarrassing to contact them, so he waited a bit to see if they'd call asking for it, but they never did. He ended up throwing it out. Story 19. Not a hotel worker, but once stayed in a resort in the Dominican where someone had crap in the safe. Or I guess, carried their crap to the safe? Not sure. Either way, I guess the staff hadn't checked to see if anything was in there when cleaning after the last people. Story 20. 25 years ago, I worked at a snooty part of a snooty ski resort in Park City, Utah. Most of the regular guests were just typical old rich white dudes. But during Sundance season, though, the celebrities come out. There is a certain musician, entertaining us for decades now, who has a disgusting hobby. Or did in the early 90s at least. Next time you're cutting footloose or getting close to the danger zone, just know that Kenny Loggins gives his entire family coffee ground enemas, which leaves a giant mess and leaves it for the hotel staff to clean up, twice in one stay. Story 21. My ex-wife projectile vomited all over a room at the La Quina in Somerville after way too many Socos at the Rattlesnake. I cannot drive 93 northbound out of Boston without some degree of shame. Sorry, La Quina workers. I did the best I could, but there was only so much that could be done. Also, this is one of the many reasons she is now my ex-wife. Story 22. A bear. First, you gotta understand that a lot needs to happen for this to occur. Our lowest floor was still about 1.5 meters from the ground, and each outside room had a balcony rail. However, a guest had decided to want to unload his motorcycle from his truck and leave the ramp down, so, I'm assuming, he could ride the bike up when he was done. The guest that was staying in the room had room service, decided to leave the food uncovered, and the balcony doors open, and later went to the hotel pool, spa, to relax. Upon returning, they had gone to us at reception and said that there was a bear in the room. Puzzled, we quietly approached the room and slowly opened the door. Lo and behold, there was a bear-eating room service and making a mess of my afternoon. We called Parks Canada to deal with it. Guest was not charged a cleaning fee. Story 23. It was a family retreat, kids' birthday party. The adults were getting crap-faced while the kids were in the presidential suite raising. They had decided to have a fully stocked ice cream bar and allowed the kids to do what they wanted with it. Candies crushed into the carpet. Chocolate footprints on the walls. Whipped cream dam everywhere. Fruit punch spilled on the bed. In total, we had to charge them about $7,000 in damages, which they took to court because they thought the cleanup would be included. That's why we did it at a hotel. They also smashed glass all over our dog hiking trail, which I had to clean up. Story 24. I do hotel renovations, so we find anything the housekeepers have forgotten over the years. Most often we find dirty magazines, clothing, children's toys, sometimes substances in super random places. Story 25. One of my favorite hotel stories. Not a room, but the pool. It's late evening, and a woman comes angrily into our lobby from the pool with 3 children and says, "You guys need to do something about what's going on out there," and gestures to the pool area. I look at her inquisitively, and she just says, "Go look, you'll see." I walk outside, and it's pretty immediately clear the couple in the hot tub are discreetly having sex. I approach just enough to get their attention and say, "Hi guys, I know everyone's here to have a good time tonight, but we got a complaint about some hot and heavy activity in the hot tub. They're clearly intoxicated, but apologize and say it will stop. A few minutes later, the phone rings. It's the woman who complained before calling from her room, which faces the pool. They're still at it. You need to do something. Children are staying in this hotel. I go back outside, and sure enough, now that the spectators are gone, they're ducking it out in the hot tub. I go back out, tell them to get out. They start giving me the story. It's their anniversary. They're very sorry. We won't have any more problems with them, etc., etc. I foolishly let them stay in the hot tub. 10 minutes later, phone rings. Seriously? Same lady. I look out the window. They're both totally naked. I'm sorry, ma'am. I've warned them. I'm calling the police. Police arrive and head out to the pool. The officer handles it like a pro. He's very nice, lets them know that it's inappropriate. But he doesn't want to ruin what's clearly a fun weekend for them both. But they need to go to their room and not come out for the rest of the night. They are to stay in their room until tomorrow morning. No excuses. The couple thanks him for his understanding and promises they'll behave and stay in their room. The officer and I wind up chatting and laughing about it all. And he asks if he can grab a cup of coffee in our lobby while he fills out his report. Of course he can. He's sitting in the lobby. I'm back to work, and I hear him say, "Oh, you've got to be damn kidding me!" I'm shocked at the broken quietness as I see him jump up and exit the lobby, right to the hot tub, where the same couple is back in the hot tub making out. I can only assume they took the stairs at the end of the hall out to the parking lot and around to the pool. Arrested them both. They came back Monday afternoon. They were arrested on Friday night to collect their property. Story 26. There was an older woman who checked in my second week of being there. She definitely should not have been independent. She lived in town and booked a room for a week. She said that she was getting her house renovated because it was infested with fiberglass. She was probably in her 70s or was just not upkeeping herself for a person in her 60s. She would walk around with one of those surgical masks and wearing yellow rubber gloves. As the week went on, she started to wear bandages on her arms. We think she was scratching herself. I bet if we asked, it would have been because of the fiberglass. She shouldn't have been able to drive, but she kept going to and from her house to get more things. Basically was moving in. Our hotel was on a main road, and she would just back up into it without looking. It was a miracle she never got into an accident. But other than that, she would spend most of her time in the room and occasionally would walk to the office, where the manager would sit. This would be me or one of my other coworkers, and just spout crazy stories about fiberglass and how it was everywhere and all over her room. Once the week was up, she extended her stay another 5 days because her house wasn't ready yet. She repeatedly declined maid service, so we could never really get a glance of the condition of the room. Yet she would keep complaining that her air conditioning had fiberglass all over it. And one of the days she came to the door complaining that the room was infested with spiders. And she showed a tissue that she said had spiders in it, but there was nothing, like real sad stuff. Unfortunately, since we didn't really have any real way of helping her, my boss advised me to tell her that we are booked solid for the rest of the summer, etc., so she couldn't extend her stay any longer. So we waited out those last few days, dealing with her complaining and occasionally catching glances at the room as the maids brought her towels and such. From what we saw, there were pillows everywhere. A big bag of perfumes, pills, etc. sprawled out on the dresser. So many random things, etc. She was seen a few times carrying large garbage bags into the room. We weren't sure what was in them. Just imagine a room that a mentally ill person had been staying in. She also had a few weird interactions with guests that made them complain. So we really could not wait until she was gone. But this is the freakiest part where we get to the answer to what we found after a guest's stay. It was spotless. On her last night, we think she climbed out the window, first floor, and put stuff in her car and left, stealing the key too, but that's common enough we just replaced them. We went back and looked on camera, and she was not on camera at all. The night manager did not see her leave. If you leave the regular way, you have to be seen by the manager. The office is in the front and it's a small hotel. Only way she could have done it was through the window. Every worker at the hotel was so curious to see what the room was like after she was gone. It was insane, clean, nothing broken except the air conditioner air filter. She said it had fiberglass all in it, but other than that, not much else. We still had a third party clean the room, but it was freaking weird, man. My boss said she drove by the address and it was a beautiful house, must be a couple meal minimum. And there was a metal trailer in the driveway. We think she started living in that after the hotel. Sad and just so bizarre. I really hope she got some help or something. There really wasn't much I specifically could do, so we had to just move on. Story 27. I've worked night audit at a couple hotels for a few years now, and I've got a couple of stories of nastiness left behind in rooms. The first story happened about a week after I started working night audit. This guy who was staying on our first floor had decided to go outside to smoke in only a towel. His towel apparently became stuck in the door, and in a genius move, he grabbed the smoker's pole and busted out the window to his room. When he climbed in, he hit himself badly. The shower curtain, bedding, and a couple of pillowcases had to be sent out to be professionally cleaned. and the rest of the room had to be professionally cleaned. The hotel charged him with the cost of the window, the cost of the cleanings, and for every night the room was out of order, which was about a month. During cleanup, one of our housemen hit by the glass in the window and had to get treated in case of blood-borne disease and get stitches. The guest paid for all that too. The cost was around $10,000 for everything, and he was banned from the property forever. He tried to come in again about a year later with a third-party reservation, and our GM personally waited for him and escorted him off the property. The second story is about a man who we called Huge James. Huge James is literally the fattest man I've ever seen. He's pretty tall and easily at 500 pounds. In his room are his wife, his daughters, and himself. The women in the family were all normal size. This family quickly developed a bad reputation with our pizza chains that delivered because they would order a lot of pizza and never tip the driver. The drivers would come down and complain to me or other front desk staff about this. It got to the point where the Domino's drivers would just give us the pizzas to take up to their room. Huge James and his family never let housekeeping in for about a week, and when they finally were allowed in, there was so much trash from fast food and pizza that they had begun to stuff it under the beds. What is worse is that Huge James was physically too big to use the toilet in the room. We have rooms with reinforced toilets, so we absolutely could have accommodated him. So he had defecated in the tub. He then would use our nice white hotel towels to wipe himself and just leave it on the floor. Nobody knew about the towels until our laundry lead, Miss Brenda, the sweetest and nicest little woman I know, found them herself. We had to throw the towels away, and we nearly lost Miss Brenda that day as well. While that was going on in the laundry room, one of our housekeepers was cleaning the room and noticed a towel tucked into the side of one of the beds. She pulled the towel out and a giant dildo came flying out with the towel. I saw the pictures of it, and end to end, it was almost as wide as the towel it was covered with. In addition to this, there were stains all over the mattress that had soaked through the sheets and onto the mattress. In the bathroom, the tub wasn't draining, and when they pulled the stopper mechanism out to try and clear the blockage, a lot of poop came with it, and that's how we knew they were shoving the poop down the shower drain. During this time, they had been staying on a third-party reservation and making a new reservation every few days. When the new reservation popped up in our system after discovering what they had done to the room, the GM decided to evict them. Huge James came down and started screaming at the front desk supervisor about how the mess wasn't his fault and that it was retarded daughter doing all that, and making the messes, and defecating in the tub. Those were his exact words, and how he talked about his daughter, if that helps you understand what kind of a person he really was. Everyone had met his wife and daughters, and they were really nice people. So we didn't believe him when he made claims that his daughter was the one making the messes. Huge James drove a lifted Hummer with huge chromed-R rims, and the night before his eviction, I jotted down his license plate number in case he tried to pull something before he left. He did. When he found out that he was no longer allowed on the property, he trashed his room and smeared all the sauce packets from fast food and actual food on the walls, the TV, and the windows. They found food between the mattresses, and the bed frames had been broken. When it was time for him to go, we had police there to escort them off the property. After they left, all the damage was found in the room, and because I had the license plate number, they were found and charged with vandalism, I think, and we took them to court for the damage to room. It came out in court that it was actually him that was defecating in the tub, and he destroyed the room before they left. Story 28. I worked security for a while at a really large hotel. Two stand out in my mind. The first, a guest that went out by ambulance because of some allergic reaction, what the guest claimed at least. The room was full of diarrhea. The smell was horrible. I've never smelled crap like that and hope to never again gag. The second wasn't something left but an assistance call. Elderly man was unresponsive when we got there. We used a defibrillator on him till the ambulance arrived and he actually survived. He came back to the hotel some months later to thank us. It was great. Most of those calls didn't end well, so having one who survived and came back to say hey was nice. Story 29. Empty boxes of fried chicken and the bones laying all over the floor between beds. White powder on the dresser and a lamp thrown through the glass door dividing two rooms of a suite once. Dirty diapers and birthday cakes smashed into the walls. People get really crafty when you have to kick them out for trying to have a party. I think the only one that tops that was a guest's corpse. Full disclosure, I wasn't the one who found that. The guy downed a fifth of wild turkey and a bottle of pills. Never found out why. For those with dark humor, though, we Googled him afterwards and found out he owned a funeral home. My manager asked me why he would bother to do it in the hotel, considering that I was the one who found out about that. And my first response was, you never mix your business with pleasure. Story 30? Here's my story. I used to work at a hotel as a housekeeper. The rule was when you finished all of your rooms, you had to go help the other housekeepers, because they like to go slow to get more hours, and we just can't allow that. Anyways, so I wander up to the second floor down at the far end, room 226, a double queen. The room hadn't been stripped yet. The bedding and trash is still in there. And I thought that was odd, because normally we have all of the rooms stripped by noon, and it was 3 p.m. Well, I opened the door and this overwhelming stench of crap just slams into my face. Not even like normal crap smell either. Like someone had been devouring hot sauce-covered shrimp at an all-you-can-eat buffet for 3 days. I pull my shirt collar up over my nose. It can't be that bad. They probably just didn't flush, right? I press on into the bathroom, eyes beginning to water, my throat having dry involuntary seizures. I force my poor eyes open. Nothing. The damn bathroom is spotless. Oh, where is it? The panic sets in. I must go further into the darkness. I must cross the hotel room and open the window. Crap was smeared all over the white duvets and sheets on both beds. This dude had literally crap himself, smeared it in the bed, switched beds, and crap in that one too. He left a trail of sickly brown matter across the carpet, decorated with tiny surprise crap nuggets just for me. I noped. I told front desk that I absolutely refused to clean that room, and if they wanted to write me up, fire me, I would be fine with that. Story 31. Not a worker, but once my family checked into our hotel and go to our room and open it up, only to find a very mortified naked man sitting on the couch watching TV. Made eye contact and just backed out of there. He has the same exact name as me, so that's where the mess up came about. Story 32. I was road tripping alone and decided to support the local economy of this small town I was stopping in and stay in a small family-owned motel instead of a chain. It was obviously infested with bed bugs. Obvious. The next morning, that is. I arrived late at night and went straight to bed. The worst thing was that I was moving myself out to college and had all my worldly possessions in the car with me. All of my clothing, all of my bedding, the few pieces of furniture I was bringing. Fortunately, isolating everything that had been in that room in trash bags and buying bedbug spray immediately prevented it from infesting everything I owned. But all the time I spent anticipating the worst got me hugely stressed out. Story 33. We got a call from an anonymous person asking for us to do a wellness check on a guest. I get a call from security a few minutes later, and the guy on the other end of the radio sounded pretty shook up. Maud, we need you up here ASAP. I get upstairs and the 2 security guards look pale. They refused to go into the room, only saying that they knew I would know how to handle the situation. I'm a combat vet, an ex-police officer. I get into the room and everything is tidy. Bags packed, beds made, etc. At that moment, I see the balcony door open and what appears to be someone laying out on the balcony wearing all their clothes. Drunk? Passed out? No. As I got to the balcony, I could now see the person's lap and a revolver in their hand on said lap. I stop for a moment and realize he's not moving. So I step out onto the balcony, and the gravity of the situation becomes clear. He end his life. I'll spare you the details, but I didn't have to check much to call it. At least this was the middle of the night. One shot, no other guests were awakened. And I was able to get PD, coroners, and detectives in, and all of them, including the body out through the back with no one else knowing anything happened. I went back downstairs and finished my pizza. Story 34. Guy came in for the weekend, hired an escort, and OD'd on substances. The worst part was probably when his sister came to get all his belongings. When we pulled his car out of valet, we noticed 2 baby seats in the back. Story 35. Not my proudest moment, but I clogged up a sink and toilet once. I was going on vacation and was going to have a 13-hour layover in Frankfurt. I figured this will be fun. I'll find luggage storage and explore the city. Maybe catch a museum, walk through beautiful fall leaves and get lunch and some apple wine. But I got sick on my first flight. I had tried to take sleeping pills, but just couldn't fall asleep. I've taken these pills every day for a decade, but never on a plane before. I knew if you couldn't fall asleep within the 20 minutes it takes to activate, if you forced yourself, or were forced to stay awake, it would actually have the opposite effect. So I'm sitting on the plane, wide damn awake with my heart racing. When I get off, I think I need to find a day-rate hotel near the airport, take a nap, before I figure out next steps. I started to become feverish. I managed to get shuttled to a day-rate hotel in the middle of nowhere near the airport. I was the only person there. I check in and ask where I could get lunch after a nap. I was informed that there was nothing nearby, and the restaurant was closing in 5 minutes and wouldn't open until I should likely need to check out. So even though I feel sick, I order something which I thought was a hamburger, but was actually something from Hamburg. I also got some apple wine since it was looking like I wasn't going to be going out exploring now. It was disgusting. I don't know why I tried to eat it. Defeated and sick, I went to my room. Instantly, the room started to spin. I feel so hot, I strip off all my clothes. And then I realize I have a major problem. I feel the urge to have explosive diarrhea and explosive projectile vomit. The trash can was mesh, so my only option was to sit on the crapter and vomit into the small low sink right next to the toilet. When I thought this was over, I took a shower and laid down. Then the room would spin again, and it would start all over. For hours. For hours, this cycle continued. How long had I been here? Had I missed my flight? Is it the next day yet? If I hadn't missed my flight, what time do I need to leave to make it? Will they even let me on the plane in the state I'm in? Finally, hours later, the room isn't spinning again. I survey the damage. A slightly damp bed from me laying on the duvet after my showers. Toilet clogged. Sink. Oh, damn the sink. I try to unclog the toilet, but with no tools or a poop knife, it's futile. But I try to save the sink. With no cups or tools in the room, I cup my vomit in my hands and scope it out to try to put some in the toilet. But there is too much. I try to make some go down the shower, but I quickly realize this is a worse plan. After another hour of trying to make things right, I simply take another shower and put clothes on. I had around €300 on me that I'd expected to use to buy souvenirs for family from this Frankfurt day trip. I left the entire thing on the desk with a note of, "I'm so sorry." I then check out and say, "I'm sorry, I was sick in the room," to the bewildered 2 staff in the hotel. I then asked for the shuttle to take me to the airport. I see a poor woman start to head to my room right as I board the shuttle. I did manage to feel 100% better by the time I went through security, but I'm still very ashamed of what the poor cleaning people probably found and smelled from that room. Story 36. My girlfriend worked front desk at a hotel that was connected to a hospital, so they frequently had visiting outpatients staying there. One day a lady came down and was clearly disoriented. She ripped out her tracheotomy in the lobby. They rushed her over to the hospital, got her fixed up, sent her back to her room, and then she came downstairs and did it again. One of the worst shifts she ever had. Story 37. 3 guys in one room left all of their windows open and lights on overnight in the summer. I have never seen so many different types of bug flying around the room. It was terrifying. We ran in spraying bug killer like our lives depended on it, then ran out and left the room for an hour. We came back to a floor that was almost black with dead bugs. I can still hear the crunching. Story 38. I once cleaned a stayover during an anime convention. Found a bunch of anime girl plush dolls and a sex toy in the half-made bed. I'm into anime, so it wasn't a surprise for me, but I could only imagine literally any one of my older coworkers finding that. Story 39. Not a cleaner, but a hotel user. My family and I once walked into a hotel room only to find it in complete disrepair. Toilet was beginning to overflow, fridge was not plugged in and had some sort of fruit or something in it, bed was unmade and smelly. It didn't even have a closet. Worst thing to come to after a 5-hour drive with the family. Pool was immaculate. I slept there instead. It was a good day. Story 40. Homeless man came into some money somehow. We never quite figured out how, but either way he stayed in the same room for about 2 months. Eventually, we convinced him that he needed to go elsewhere as we had a big conference, or something like that, that was going to fill the whole hotel. I was a bellman, and the hotel had a courtesy shuttle for the guests. I was instructed to give him a ride to the new hotel he would be staying at. I helped him get the remaining stuff from his room, and the moment I entered, I knew the room would be out of service for a while. There was trash everywhere. The bathtub was used as a waste bin. There were dirty stained towels pouring out of the closet, and he had stripped the bed. I put his sleeping bag on the mattress. The worst part was the smell. Despite the fact that he had been staying there for at least 2 months by this point, I am 99% sure he never once used the shower. It was the strangest, most disgusting thing I had ever seen. The room was out for almost 2 weeks while it went through a deep clean, but it still had that smell for the rest of the year and a half that I worked there. Story 41. This is more weird than bad, but I forgot that a guest decided to extend his stay, and so when a maid went to clean his room, she called me up saying she wasn't able to get into the room. I went up and unlocked it for her. Upon opening the door, we peered into the room, and she immediately yelled and hollered about how she wasn't going to step inside that room and quickly just left the scene. The guest, a sweet and somewhat nerdy 20-something computer programmer, had what I can only describe as an immense amount of voodoo items in this room, including this strange statue of a raven, a large tome, candles, and other fetishist items. Felt bad for invading his privacy when I realized he had asked to extend his stay. His door always had the "Do Not Disturb" sign on it, and I had just assumed he forgot to remove it before leaving as many guests do. Story 42. Friend used to be a general manager. There was a guest who had stayed there for a few days, but kept the "Do Not Disturb" sign up, not letting anyone in. Well, after 3 days, they had to go in to clean the room and do a welfare check, and they found this chick tied up to the bed with a camera on her. Some guy had kept her tied up for 3 days straight and was live streaming it somewhere. Story 43. I work in laundry, so I see a lot of gross linens. The worst being feces covering about a 3 feet by 3 feet section of a duvet, just smeared in. You bet that was trashed. I've also had a full room worth of laundry covered in vomit, also trashed. Story 44. Worst ever one I can remember is when there was a Christmas party or wedding or something going on where people got extremely drunk, and one particular gentleman, upon checking out, said he had a lovely stay and left fairly quickly without any free breakfast or anything. Now, when the housekeeping went in, they were met with the most awful smell. I think someone described it as the smell of sewers mixed with the smell of the bin lorry on a high summer's day, but could not find the source. That is until they whipped off the duvet to be faced with the bed absolutely covered in diarrhea. When I say covered, I mean covered, and the man tried to hide it with a duvet cover. It was so bad it had leaked through the sheets. Mattress protectors, and most of the way through the mattress, it was sickening. This lovely gentleman thought he could get away with that without a word. But luckily, we take contact details and a credit card on check-in. Let's just say it was a bloody awkward phone call I had to make. Story 45. I worked as a housekeeper for about a month back in April 2010. This was fairly early in my shift, and I was on my way to pull linens. Swipe in, shut the door behind me, and start to go about my routine. First order of business, do a once-over of the bathroom. I should have known something was up because the light was off and I couldn't see clearly into the bathroom. This room was on the side of the hotel that the sun hit hardest, and every other room was flooded with light. So either I just needed glasses, I'm not paying attention, or both. So I walk forward, keeping my eyes on the floor for some reason, swing my arm around to hit the light, start to walk forward onto the tile as I'm tilting my head back up, and almost straight into a pair of men's briefs hanging from the ceiling at about face level. I scare easy, and surprise Fruit of the Looms was no exception. I yelped, about stumbled backward into a wall as my eyes adjusted to the laundered nightmare I had just found myself in. I dust myself off, walk into the bathroom, to find this guest had a laundry line running along the shower and the ceiling and the door, and had been starting to wash clothes in the sink, grabbed the linens, and got out. I almost face-planted, had skid marks. Story 46. My hotel found substances and used needles scattered in the bedsheets. We had to close the room, call in a deep cleaning crew contractor who spent the greater part of 4 hours completely breaking the room down in search for more. It cost something like $12,000, I think, overall. Story 47. I worked as a front desk receptionist for about a year at a small hotel in a small town. Apparently, sometime before my shift, 2 underage teenagers had gotten a room. Early in the morning around breakfast time, we got a complaint from someone in a neighboring room about the TV being on extremely loud. Almost at the same time, police cars started pulling up, followed by EMTs. I guess the teenagers' plans were to rent the room and end their lives so their families wouldn't be the ones to find the bodies. But when one had hit their wrists and it wouldn't stop, the other called an ambulance in a fit of panic. I was told they would both recover and most likely be put into therapy. But that was the last I heard of it, as I only stayed a few weeks after that. Story 48. My mom used to do housekeeping for hotels, and she has seen so many disgusting things. People have pissed and crap all over the rooms, smeared crap on the walls, vomited everywhere. People can be incredibly disgusting. Story 49. Not a worker, but when I was checking out of a motel at the shore one Sunday morning, there were 2 maids wearing plastic gloves and face masks, carrying a mattress wrapped in plastic out of another room. I do not want to know what happened in there. Story 50. I walked into one of the larger suites and found a $2 tip with a note of, "Sorry about the mess. Our daughter had stomach flu." It was contained to the bathroom, but this kid somehow hit the ceiling multiple times. Not a smell I ever want to experience again. Story 51. Not a bad thing, but a good thing. My friend who works in a hotel in Denver said that Warren G left his shoes. I asked what size. She said 12. I said that's my size. So after the mandatory 30 days or whatever, she mailed me his Adidas shell toes. Whenever I wear them, I regulate so hard. Story 52. This is a secondhand story. A buddy of mine is a hotel manager in a large downtown hotel. They had an escort come down to the front desk fully nude, screaming in hysterics to call 911. She had just woken up in one of their rooms strapped to the bed like it was Dexter's table. The whole room had been D'd in plastic. The John was in the shower when she came to. She managed to wriggle free and ran out of the room. By the time the cops arrived, the dude had left, but the room was still all Dextered up. The security footage could see the guy leave the hotel, but he'd obscured his face on every camera angle. To my buddy's knowledge, the guy was never caught. Story 53. Damn broccoli. Everywhere. In the bed, the tub, the toilet, drawers. It was ground into the carpet. No clue why. That's the weirdest one. The worst thing to find is when someone has died. Those are really bad days. Story 54. Used to work in the laundry. One day, my housekeeper friend came and got me to look in a room. Everyone else had already come and had a peek. Someone apparently had a lime jello bath in the jacuzzi tub. They had to get it professionally cleaned and taken apart because it was inside the jets, and even then, I think they had to completely replace it. But I wasn't working there by then. Story 55. Cleaned dorm rooms after my classmates moved out for the summer. Not very fun. A desk drawer stuffed with used tampons. Even less fun, the nest of wasps that were feeding on them. Pretty damn terrible, knowing exactly whose tampons I was cleaning up and tampon-fed wasps I was being stung by. The worst part, after some reflection, realizing that she was ashamed of being a normal, healthy girl, that really bummed me out. Story 56. Worked at a large hotel. One night, an older couple checked in for their anniversary, had a very expensive meal in our restaurant, ordered up some nice champagne to the room. The next morning, the maid service went to the room and on the door was a sticky note saying, "Call the police, don't come in." Maid called down to hotel security. They came up, opened the room, and the couple had ended their lives. After all was cleaned and family notified, we found out the wife had dementia and cancer, so they had one last great night. Sad. Story 57. Worked in an Irish castle hotel. We had a wedding nearly every weekend, one time after the wedding party had left, and the bride and groom ducking on their honeymoon. The cleaning staff went up to clean the room. Two of them vomited in the room after witnessing the state of the room. The room smelled like crepe. You could smell it from down the corridor. So the scene was as follows. Bed sheets covered in crepe and a crapty. Crap on the floor, crap on one of the nightstands, crap. In the bin was a massive sex toy. Oh, and of course the vomit from the cleaning staff. We had to get a company called Crime Scene Cleaners to clean the room. Story 58. Wasn't me, but my mom went to clean a room one day to find the door locked or barricaded. This is fuzzy, it's been a few years since. But the guest who was staying there had end his life, and she found him. Story 59. An elderly lady couldn't control her bladder and bowls and shat on the floor. The executive housekeeper said her eyes stung, and it took a lot of time for the carpet to get deep cleaned. Story 60. Not me, but my mom. She worked at a nice hotel in Florida when I was little, and she had to clean up a room after a rock star stayed there. She said that the room wasn't too bad at first. The usual food wrappers and such laying about. The worst part was the bathroom. According to her, the rock star had broken liquor bottles in the bathtub and ground the glass into the bottom. It took her and another worker a good part of the day to clean. She quit not long after that. Story 62. While working at a 4-diamond hotel, there was a guest who had a suite with a jacuzzi tub where he had placed all of his belongings in the tub and proceeded to use the tub as a toilet for a few days. I should mention that his belongings were all very nice items, including multiple designer bags and suits. The hotel was eventually contacted by his family, who let us know that he had gone Mia after refusing to take his antipsychotic medication. They came and picked him up and forced him to check out, but never returned for his poopy belongings.